when we remember back, one of the things we all remember is young love, right? Long time remembering, I'll tell you. Okay, so we got boy meets girl, girl meets boy. Well, you see, I had a bit of a problem with this girl meets boy business. When I went off to college in 1959 to Mills College in Oakland, California, it wasn't that there weren't any men in Oakland, California, it's just that none of them were at Mills. Mills was a girls' school. It's, well, more or less now. So the only men that I saw as a freshman there were sitting on the flowered couches in the lobby of Mills Hall. Now, originally, Mills was a ladies' finishing school. It was established in the Victorian times, and Mills Hall was the original building. It was a beautiful white Victorian building with a central lobby, and on each side of the lobby there were the wings where the student rooms were. And on each side of that lobby there were French doors. And every weekend, we freshmen and anybody else who didn't have a date would stand there at the French doors, and we would take the curtain and push it aside and look at the gentlemen on the flowered couches. And we would make nasty remarks like, oh, we want to go out with him. And then when the girls would come down to meet with their dates, we'd say, oh my gosh, oh, he's going out with her. We made all these terrible remarks, very disparaging, but what we all really wanted was our own young man on one of those flowered couches. Well, Mills College figured out that they needed to figure out some way to get us in touch with some gentlemen there, after all, and they had to be the proper kind of gentlemen. So once a month we had what we called a drop-in, where they would bring men from the nearby campuses like UC Berkeley and Stanford and the University of San Francisco. They'd bring them in and for a dance. And the dance was held at Hampton Hall because Hampton Hall had this vast oak floor that was perfect for dancing. And what would happen at these drop-ins would be that all the gentlemen would line up on one side of this vast oak floor, and all the ladies would line up on the other side, and the ladies would start to giggle, and then they'd point, and then, and the boys would stand there and they'd put their hands in the pockets, and shift one foot, and then the music would start, and that floor was no man's land. Nobody would move. And then finally, some brave young man would pick his way across the minefield of that vast oak floor and ask some young lady to dance. And then another, he made it, so he would go, and pretty soon the whole dance floor was filled with dancers, and I never had any trouble being asked to dance, but what I did have was the two-dance curse. You see, they play the music in sets of two, and after two dances, my partner would disappear, and I'd never see him for the rest of the night. And after two drop-ins, I still didn't have a young man on the flowered couches. This was a crisis for my big sister. You see, we had big sisters who would help us to orient us into college life, and my big sister, she wasn't really a sister, she was just a helper. She thought that it was a crisis, that I had been through two drop-ins and still didn't have a date. So this was when she formed the second floor social assistance committee. Now, as far as I know, I was the only one that they ever assisted. So I was called before them, and I told them about the two dances, and they said, what do you do while you're dancing? And I said, I am not going to be one of these fluffy little girls that have nothing to talk about. I want to say important things. I want them to know that I have a brain. So I usually start out with a question like, do you believe in women being allowed to be president? And then I often follow it up with, can you prove that there's really a God? And, light subjects like that. And they immediately formed a collective frown and got into a huddle. And when they came out, they had a strategy and a set of 7 instructions. Number 1, my hair was to be lightened. Number 2, my eyelashes were to be darkened. Number 3, my mouth was to be reddened and a permanent smile was to be affixed on it. Where am I now? 4, thank you. Then, number 4, my neckline was to be lowered, and my attributes were to be enhanced. And number 6, my mind was to be put on hold, and number 7, most important, my mouth was to be put on mute. They gave me a mantra that I was to say over and over again. Be quiet, smile, be sexy. And they whispered, believe it or not, this last word because in the 1950s, sex was a 4-letter word. So, I was ready to go. Next drop in, went in there. First young man across that vast oak floor headed right for me. It was, the gentlemen were from Stanford. So, he came and he was good looking. So, we started dancing. I didn't say anything. Really, I just kind of smiled. And we danced the first dance, the second dance, the third dance, the fourth dance. Oh my gosh, I secretly applauded myself. Yes. Well, turned out I didn't have a lot of trouble keeping my mouth shut because this gentleman had an athletic scholarship to Stanford. And he liked to talk about sports, and I didn't know anything about sports, so it was hard for me to keep quiet. So but that mine, I still needed to say something. He needed to know that I could form a complete sentence at least. I needed him to know that I was observant, and he gave me the perfect opportunity. Because you see, Stanford is a very academic school, and they don't look kindly on their athletic scholarship recipients. And they had been giving him a hard time. So I thought, this is the perfect opportunity. I knew exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, I don't know why people are so down on sports. It promotes teamwork. Well, pretty harmless, right? Well, as I started to form that sentence, that mantra kept going over and over in my mind. Be quiet, smile, be sexy. Be quiet, smile, be sexy. So this is what came out of my mouth. I don't know why people are so down on sex. It promotes teamwork. Well, as you might imagine, his mouth kind of dropped and got so big, and I didn't wait for the rest. I was out of there. I was faster than Cinderella at midnight. Out that door, back to do my penance before the second floor social assistance committee and admit that I had failed. But you know what? After all these years of experience and understanding, I now realize that probably if I had stayed there and waited to find out, I probably would have ended up with a young man on that flowered couch.